Hi guys, and welcome back to the Park End podcast. It is episode number 4. Big thanks for all of the support on the previous episode. We were joined by Kevin Campbell. We were talking about the Anfield hoodoo and his record at Anfield, and he said, hopefully, this time if I say I want to keep the record, I'll get rid of it, because every year I've spoken about getting rid of it, and look what happened. Kevin Campbell's wish came true, along with every other Evertonian's wish, and we finally done one over on them lot at Anfield. Another very special episode today. We're joined by a regular on the Mighty Blues YouTube channel. If you watch the Mighty Blues on YouTube, you'll know Tom, and Tom, I probably should give Tom the channel, to be perfectly honest with you, because he does more than me on it. We are joined by Tom T-Logic 1991, of course. Absolutely fantastic fella, love having him on the channel, always an unbelievable chat. We done the review to the derby, which for me was the best stream I've ever done. Just so much positivity, and obviously we were reviewing arguably the best game I've ever witnessed as an Evertonian in terms of results wise, and obviously the hoodoo that ended on that day on Saturday. So we're joined by Tom to go through his Everton story, as well as talk all about Everton Football Club. We're going to get into Tom's job a little bit as well, because he actually works within the world of football, which I'm sure is a dream to most of us. But before we get into it, Tom, how are you, mate? We spoke on Monday when we obviously we were doing the review to the Liverpool game, and I think we probably thought, what, might be a nice little comfortable week here. And since then we've had Bramley-Moore dock, obviously the approval for the planning permission for Bramley-Moore dock by Liverpool City Council. We've had Luca Dean's new contract. We've had rumours about Max Aarons. It's just been mental, hasn't it, mate? So how are you doing?
Yeah, sorry, mate. I mean, it's been a bit of a whirlwind season, to be honest with you, hasn't it? I mean, the emotions of Everton supporters are just nuts. I mean, normally, you'd back in the day, you'd just be like open to stay up in the league, but now it's trying to fight for titles and things like it. It's just crazy. I mean, going on just about the stadium. I mean, it's good news and sad news really for me, because it's fantastic that you see the club pushing forward, but the sentimental value of Goodison Park there's sort of in niggling thing in the back of your head that it's inevitability that I don't think a lot of people will get until that last game when we're there, and you've got to leave. It'll even be weirder when you're walking down by Goodison Park and when it's not there. The amount of times you drive past or walk past and you're looking, even in a taxi going to town or something like that, and you just have a little nose, don't you, out the window and just see how it's looking. But I mean, it's going to be a sad time, but hopefully Bramley-Moore's more of a fortress than what Goodison Park is.
Well, let's hope so. That's the plan, isn't it? You put a brilliant comment in our live stream yesterday, on Tuesday, when we were talking about Bramley-Moore, and that's obviously, we haven't been at Goodison Park, certainly not as a whole, 40,000 Evertonians for well over a year now. It was the Man United game last season. I know we had the Chelsea game this season, the Arsenal game, where there was select fans, but as a 40,000 Evertonian fan base, we haven't been there for over a year, and the news for Bramley-Moore was absolutely exceptional, and seeing the stadium and the presentation, it just made you absolutely proud to be an Evertonian. But then the realistic element does hit that, hang on, we haven't got much longer left at Goodison Park, and we already haven't been there for a year because of obviously what's going on in the world at the moment, and no, that can't be helped. But you were spot on. You said we need to savour every single moment at Goodison, because I know it's 2 or 3 seasons away, and that might seem like a long time, but when you're actually divide that and dissect that into games, it's not very long whatsoever, and we still don't know when we're going to be back there as 40,000 Evertonians. It's not like we're sitting here saying, right, we're back next week as a whole fan base, so we've got from now until 2023 or 2024, whenever the stadium will be officially up. It's not. We don't know when we're going to be back as 40,000 Blues screaming and shouting our heads off, so we really do have to savour every moment at Goodison Park, don't we? And you're right, it's so good to see the new stadium and what it's going to look like, and the presentation, and the future of the football club, and it is needed, but it's also, there is an element, I think, of all of us that are deeply saddened, especially looking at the Goodison Legacy project, which you look at it and you think this looks amazing, and the different housing and the opportunities for the community and the retail spaces and stuff, but then I feel like every Evertonian sits back and goes, it's just not going to be the same without Goodison there.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to put into like words. So like when you do scan your ticket in and you're squeezing through the turnstiles and things like that, and you're going up the stairs, and then soon as you just hit that second step and you just see the pitch and how close you are to the pitch and things like that. Like, over the years, I've had 2 season tickets. I've been in Upper Bullens as a teenager, and then now I'm in the main stands, and it's 2 different sort of views, but it's the exact same feeling as you get even as a kid.
Yeah.
So I think we're in that day and age where a lot of things go very fast with social media and phones and technology and things like that, and not a lot of people sort of take in present time.
Yeah.
So when you're there, just soak it all in, because you're hoping Bramley-Moore will take that sort of atmosphere and feeling, but I don't necessarily it will. And I'll be honest with you, I don't think a lot of stadiums in the world have that sort of feeling and what Goodison can create. I mean, don't get me wrong, it can be a cesspit at times, but when it's absolutely bouncing, there's no feeling like it.
Yeah, no, it's it's one of a kind, and like you said, I completely agree with the social media stuff. By the way, as soon as I step on that second step of Goodison, my phone isn't out. I'm just taking in everything, and it's mad that it's been a year since we've been there and in that, you know, sort of situation. And even those Blues that went to the Chelsea game and the Arsenal game, I suppose it'd been a very different experience. My dad managed to get a ticket, and he said it was very different, obviously with the separation, and obviously we knew what was going on. Whereas this time, sort of last year for the Man United game, we didn't know what was ahead of us. So no, I agree, and it is there's no stadium like it, and there's no feeling like it, especially when it's bouncing and obviously we're performing, and I can't only begin to imagine what it'll be like with 40,000 Evertonians watching James Rodriguez do his business at Goodison while Carlo Ancelotti's running things on the sideline. It's amazing, and hopefully when it's safe to do so, when everything's sort of calmed down, hopefully we're back in there as 40,000 Blues, and now we can sort of we can understand, right, okay, obviously there's still a couple of things to do with the stadium, and there's still a couple of, I think, people it's got to go to be approved. I think it's got to go to the Secretary of State, but we know now that it's taking a massive step forward and that it is likely to be approved, obviously because Liverpool City Council have recommended that. So we know that, right, okay, we're in the period now where we're not going to have much longer left at Goodison. This is going ahead, so we have to understand, and we have to appreciate that, and we have to soak in every single moment, be it a loss, be it I said yesterday on the stream, Tom, I don't know if you heard me, but I said that last game at Goodison Park, you won't move me, you'll have to unscrew me seat and physically carry me out, because I'm not leaving. And I also said, you know, for every game that we're at Goodison Park now as an entire fan base, or even if we go back as 10,000 at the start of next season, if you're one of those 10,000, despite the result, despite the performance, just sit back at the end of the game for maybe 5 or 10 minutes and take it all in, because there's not going to be much longer of that. Even though sometimes you want to leave bang on the full-time whistle because we've been awful, you just got to take in what is Everton and what has been our lifetime, our life for you know, our home for life for all of us. So it'll be very, very difficult, of course. Like I said, I can't even begin to. It's been an emotional week already, mate. So if I start imagining what the last game at Goodison's going to be like, you might have to take over this podcast, because I might be sitting in the corner crying like someone off X Factor. But no, they'll have to unscrew my seat and physically remove me, because I'm not walking out of that ground on that day. But talking about Goodison and obviously the history of Goodison and us going all our life to Goodison Park, let's take it back to your childhood, growing up in the 90s, of course. Everton, what was your first Everton memory? How did you become an Evertonian? Was it the usual story of dad's an Evertonian, or was it a little bit different for you?
No, it's always been like that. I mean, I remember first early years of like the Walter Smith years and things like that, and I was always an Everton fan. I've never faltered. I've never sort of even liked the colour red. It was a strange one, really. It's never really been any sort of discussion whether I was gonna be an Everton. I was just, like a lot of people say, you're born with it, and I was just an Everton fan from day dot. I mean,
yeah.
Going back in primary school years, I mean, the sort of school was just, all my mates were Liverpool fans.
Yeah.
Even, I mean, I can't even remember one or two maybe Everton fan, but I always remember from primary school everyone was a Liverpool fan. But it just never, I mean, a lot of things like that sort of sway kids, don't they?
Yeah.
And it never even come up into my head. I mean, even like success and things like that, it was never even the case with that situation. So yeah, I mean, my earliest memory was probably when my dad took me to think it was Fulham at home in like 2002. I think it was the first year David Moyes was there, and that was all she wrote really. I mean, I think we were sat in the lower bull. I think it was either lower Bullens or the paddock. I can't really. It's very vague. I mean, I just remember being eye level with the pitch, and I remember being my dad having hold of me and just seeing we went up. I think we scored 2-0. I think Tommy Gravison scored and Kevin Campbell, funnily enough, scored. So it was just a surreal moment. As a kid, when you're walking up to the ground, you're sort of like nervous and scared, aren't you? Like you're just looking up at everyone. Everyone's like a massive tree, aren't they? And you're just trying to scare your way through. And then, but once you get through them doors, it's just it's hard to describe. It really is. I mean, grew up on Everton teams who haven't really been, let's say, like the most successful, but you fall in love with players like that. I mean, Kevin Campbell. I mean, the one main one for me was, weirdly enough, was Thomas Zidzinski.
Yeah,
it's just small, quick little player. I mean, absolutely fell in love with the fella. And you'd have other ones. I mean, David Weir, Joseph Yobo, and David Unsworth. I mean, Tony Ibbott was just coming through at the time, I think. But and then you had the two little bald fellas in the middle, Tommy Gravison and Lee Carsley. So it was a bit of it was a baptism of fire, really, growing up with Everton in like the early 2000s.
Yeah, no, spot on. And your story, funnily enough, is a little bit like mine. I went to school 5 or 10 minutes up the road from Anfield, so everybody in my school was a Liverpool fan. I was the only Evertonian, but there was never an element of me that thought, it's easier if I just become a Liverpool fan here. Despite the countless derby losses or the countless times that Liverpool was successful or finished above Everton, just everything, even weekends where Everton lost and Liverpool won, I'd just come in the week after, and I'd just be pelted constantly for the whole day, then the next day, and then the next day, but nothing ever changed me. Nothing made me think, no, you know what, it'd be much easier here for my life if I just went and supported them. It didn't. I wanted to be an Evertonian, and it made those derby wins, the couple that I had when I was during my school years, just so much better, because, right, funnily enough, the days that we won the derby, about the week after, about 6 or 7 of the Liverpool fans were off miraculously, had a cold or something and didn't bother turning up to school. But no, you're spot on. It's a unique feeling going to Goodison Park, certainly for the first time, certainly as a child, seeing obviously all of the Evertonians, the stadium. It's a mass group of fans and everybody screaming and shouting for the same 11 players on the pitch to go and win that game of football. And I think it is a massive family, but it's difficult to take in as a kid, I think, because you've never really experienced that, have you? You've never experienced that many people in one place who were screaming for the same thing and all watching the same thing. It's mad, but I suppose that's what ingrains it into us and ingrains it into our blood for the next however many years of our life that we go on, and it just becomes part of the weekly routine. Like I said, I think a lot of people, certainly during this pandemic, have struggled with without the routine, and a large part of myself, Tom's, everybody probably watching weekly routine, whether you go to the match or not, is getting up on a Saturday morning and knowing, right, it's match day today, and if you do go to the match, it's getting up and maybe leaving at 11 o'clock, going to the pub, watching the 12:30 game, getting ready, looking at the team news, either going, oh, it's going to be hard today, or getting, that's a great team, he's playing, then going the ground, watching the game, going out afterwards. It's just, like I said, it becomes part of life, and it's so vital to Evertonians, I think. So, given the names that you've just mentioned there, Lee Carsley, Tommy Gravison, Kevin Campbell, Thomas Rosiński, David Weir, David Unsworth, who was your Everton hero growing up? When you were growing up as a kid, when you'd been to Goodison for that first time, and you'd continue to go, and Everton was really, life at that point, was there any one player that you looked at and thought, he is the ultimate hero, I want to be like him?
I mean, it was the year later when Wayne Rooney just rocked up to the show, wasn't it? I mean, that lad just changed my whole view on football, really, to be honest with you. I mean, I remember sitting there and he come on against Arsenal and he just lit the place up on fire, didn't he? I mean, that goal against Arsenal just sort of etched into the memory, and I remember growing up and you're watching Everton and you're like, Everton have never really had that superstar world class player who's like elite of the elite. You never really, I mean, no fault of our own really, but we never really had the finances or never really had the sort of pulling power for a club to pull players like that. I mean, to bring someone up from the academy at 16 years of age and to do what he done.
Yeah.
I mean, it just sort of put a bit of a sparkle in my eye, and ever since then, I always followed his career and things like that. I was heartbroken when he left to Manchester United. I mean, I couldn't believe it really. I mean, I had to that. Funny enough, I was looking through the house and things like that, and I found all old Everton shirts, and I've got the Rooney one when he left for Manchester United that season. So must have been about 12, 13 when he left. But yeah, it has to be. There's not many other. It's hard to really like say to like young people how good he was, because even at 16 he was built like a bull. He was he was a man at 16, and the way he had this sort of flair about him. I remember one time where he picked up the ball in the corner and he just stood on top of it, and it just you'd be like, oh, what's he doing here? Like it was just thing where you'd think like he's just a different level.
Yeah.
So it was definitely Wayne Rooney.
Also, he was a young lad like the rest of us, sort of growing up, Evertonian all his life, family of Evertonians. And do you think at that point, as a child then, does that have any sort of bearing on your mind that this is a lad that's just like the rest of us, that's living his dream out? Or at that point, is it just sort of, oh my God, he's an amazing footballer, he's absolutely excellent, and then the older you grow, the more you sort of think he's like the rest of us, he's an Evertonian through and through?
Yeah, it's sort of hard to say really. I mean, as just a kid, I don't really necessarily you think like you start thinking about like sort of what adults would think. You're just looking at this lad who's just unbelievable footballer, and then you start hearing like he's basically one of our own and things like that, and then you start becoming more attached then, because there's sort of that thing in your head where you're like, well, if he can do it, I can do it, and things like that. And it just sparked a love for football really for me.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, it's things like that where like you could understand, like where you see other fans of clubs and you see their big players, and you understand that like it's not so much success, it's just like players who just spark it.
Yeah.
And from that point, it was a short but magical journey really with him, wasn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And then once you've got the Everton it continues then long past Wayne Rooney and other players that had left. So growing up as a kid then, was being a footballer your sort of dream? I know a lot of you, obviously young lads, grow up certainly in this city and they want to be a footballer from when they pretty much when they can walk. So was that your dream as well, or was it a little bit different for you?
Oh no, of course it was. It was always it was weird really, because it was always in the back of my mind to go do it, but I never really took any opportunity to really go do it. I mean, I never really played Sunday League, Saturday League, really growing up. I never really. I remember bits and parts of it, but I weren't necessarily like going every week and things like that. And it was sort of more so when going for like maybe 15, 16 round, like it's about 14, 15. That like funny enough, a game come out called like Footy Manager. Yeah. And I remember that coming out, and literally every summer or every day, me and my mates would just sit in my room and just play it. I mean, the amount of hours I'd take to think that I'd done it. I mean, what I'd do, I'd play about 5-6 hours, and then you go out and play on the field round by ours, or go out and play pardon me, like with red arse on the gates, and that'd just be your life. It just continue. But the weird thing is with that, like people say, a game and things like that, but that game sort of it was weird there because that game sort of put me on the path to what I'm doing now.
Yeah,
absolutely. It's sort of like in terms of like recruiting players and signing players, and then you're looking at your finances and things. I mean, you're 13, 14 years of age, and you're sort of looking at like your wage budget and things like that. And it was just, look, when I think about that, and then that was sort of like, I remember sat there and I was like, yeah, this is, I want to be like, I want to own a club.
Yeah.
Like that's where I sort of took the football bug from behind the scenes, where I was like, do I want to be a coach? Do I want to be this? There's all kinds you can do, and that just sets it up really.
Yeah, definitely. Well, like you said, Football Manager is it's a very in-depth game, isn't it? I mean, you can go on FIFA career mode and do the easy stuff and sign players and go and win the league, but Football Manager is very much about the other little bits and bobs that go into signing players, and you made the brilliant point there about it leading you up to what you're doing today, and sort of, if you like, being the catalyst for your job. Now we will go on to talk about your job in a little bit, because I think it's really important and exciting, and it's different to what most people do. Not every day you're talking to a football analyst. Certainly me, I get the joy to speak to you near enough every week on the channel, and you bring in your expertise onto the channel. And there's a certain player I want to talk to you about as well today, that Everton were linked with yesterday. It was put out by Fabrizio Romano during the stadium stuff that Everton are interested in Max Aarons, and my head had already rolled off here, and that was like Ben Godfrey had come and just launched it into the top balcony when I read that rumour. But we'll talk about that in a little bit. So what would you say, I suppose, your favourite memories as an Evertonian growing up? Is there any specific memories of games or certain goals, or I don't know, finals or anything like that sort of stick out in your mind when you think back to your childhood being a Blue?
I sort of try and put away the finals, heartache, and the semi-finals. So thanks for bringing that back up.
Sorry, mate. Sorry.
No, there's not really ever like one. It's just like a culmination of things. It was, the big one is like when we come fourth.
Yeah.
That for me was massive.
Yeah.
I mean, that come off the back of when Rooney left.
Yeah.
So it was like, well, what are we now? And then we the weird thing about that season was that we never really like done anything magic. It was just like 1-0s, grabbing 1-0s, and that season there, Tommy Gravison was, for me, he was absolutely brilliant. His attitude towards the game, and it was more so the sort of affiliation he had to like bridge the gap between a player and a fan.
Yeah.
He just had that sort of, you get that emotion out of you where you'd think we're all part of it. And that season, I thought I'd never seen Everton never be successful in my life.
Yeah.
So that sort of season was just crazy. And then you're going on to like where I started then growing up to like things like Tim Cahill coming in, and then that was where really like the teenage years of me Everton life. And the mad thing is, I mean, a lot of probably young lads watching now don't realise that Everton were just probably the best team in the city at one for a very good few years. I mean, the amount of sort of mouth I had on me back then was quite brave, really. I mean, we used to be top, be above them on numerous occasions, and it was never really sort of bat an eyelid, really. It become the norm, didn't it? And I think more importantly, though, I think you've got to give massive amounts of credit to David Moyes and what he sort of created it. I mean, he come in from Preston, and you can go through how much money he had and things like that. I mean, that fella just Wayne Rooney put a spark into my sort of Everton affiliation, but he put a spark into Goodison Park, didn't he? I mean, I think he brought back the memories and the sort of atmosphere that was missing from Goodison for a very long time. And I think he had turned a little bit sour when he left, because I think at the end of the day that's going to happen, innit? I mean, there's a lot of emotions flying around and things like that. And me personally, if you could take it back, I think he would, personally, and because I think at that point, I think he just started to create a team where we had the perfect balance in
Yeah.
a solid defence, but he started adding little gems like Kevin Morales and things like that, and I just think he was maybe 2-3 years short of what his probably end of his Everton career was. I mean, who knows what he could have created. I mean, listen, he got to semi-finals, finals. He was getting into Europe every season. And then the year after, probably the year after, the best football I've ever seen at Everton was Roberto Martinez.
Fair season.
And I mean, it was like where we say, it was just the perfect blend, wasn't it?
Yeah, absolutely.
You had David Moyes' back line, but then you had that little sprinkle of Spanish football where he just took it to another level, didn't he? And I thought, oh my God, here we go.
This is the time.
Yeah, this is it. And I remember I was working at one point with my dad, and I just remember it like Saturdays. I couldn't really get the game and things because I was working. But I just remember on the radio listening to it, and you think, what is going on here? And I remember listening to the derby when it was 3-3.
Yeah.
I just couldn't believe it. I was heartbroken really because you're like, I'm missing this here.
Yeah.
But as you get older, responsibilities come in, don't they, and things like that, and you'd rather have a nice pair of jeans and a top than go to the game at that point, don't you?
Yeah, that's it. And you mentioned Roberto Martinez's first season there. I feel like I said, that for me as well as the best football we've played in terms of a single season. And you're right, it did have the perfect blend of David Moyes' back line and Roberto Martinez brought in the nice tiki-taka football. Obviously, we brought in Romelu Lukaku. We hadn't had a solid striker at that point. We were constantly changing strikers near enough every season, and we couldn't settle on one. And Lukaku come in, and obviously he was a very talented young player. That derby himself, he put us 3-2 up, I believe, with a header, and you're sort of thinking, is this the time? We haven't beaten them for what was 4 years or something then. Is this the time to do it? And obviously they equalised. So no, I agree. I'm the same, mate. I remember growing up, and even the games I couldn't catch, the away games, you're sitting there and you're looking at updates on your phone and you're thinking, wow, we're 3-0 up there, or we're 2-0 up there, or you're looking at the goal replays and Barkley's ran from one end of the pitch against Newcastle to the other and slotted, and it just wasn't like Everton, because it was a very different style, wasn't it? Something that David Moyes brought was that grit and determination and never say die attitude, and if you're not going to win, don't lose, and fight till the end. And we got a lot of 1-0s, like you mentioned that season we finished fourth, a lot of 1-0s, a lot of scraped wins, a lot of games where it mightn't necessarily have been easy to watch. And do you sort of think when we moved into the Roberto Martinez era and we started to, sort of add that nice style of football, if you like, once that nice style of football worn off, because Roberto Martinez lost the defensive stability, do you think then we just completely lost that grit and determination that we had under David Moyes? Because that's something that a lot of Evertonians have spoke about getting back now under Carlo Ancelotti, that just fighting and digging deep and coming out with results when you mightn't necessarily think you were going to get them, or like Sheffield United win, for example, getting the goal in the last 10 minutes, even the games against Chelsea and Leicester and Arsenal earlier on in the season, when we just dug deep and fought. Is that grit that David Moyes brought? It sort of left for a little bit, didn't it? And if we weren't winning a game, you can almost guarantee we were going to lose quite heavily. So do you think that's something that Carlo Ancelotti has managed to bring back from the David Moyes days?
Yeah, 100%. I agree with that. I mean, when you do roll the history back, and then you sort of look at that next season, I mean, Jagielka was 30 odd, really, and things like that, and Sylvain Distin was like 35, and you had Tim Howard 34. I mean, these were like solid players who'd been at the club for years. I mean, I know Coleman was only like around his early 20s and that, but I know Baines was a little bit older then. He was coming into his prime of his years and things like that. But yeah, I mean, the key thing is, and not to forget that, David Moyes was a solid grinder out manager, because we didn't really have the necessary tools to be like a Roberto Martinez style. And the only thing I can really say is that where you can say, oh, these managers are dinosaurs and things like that, but these dinosaurs have got so many tools in the book that they can sort of, like you see now with Carlo Ancelotti, there's not really a set system where you can sort of say this is how Everton play. I mean, that's probably that could be a bit of a detriment in some cases, but then we've seen it a lot this season that it comes into play. I mean, I don't necessarily think that's down to the manager. I think that's necessarily down to the players who can't really adjust.
Yeah.
Because really, when you think about it, if Everton went, say, on a lost 2 games on the bounce, you'd see us just sort of keep tight, let it narrow, break, and then if we get a draw, we get a draw. But that breaks the cycle of getting beaten.
Yeah.
I think that sort of gets lost this time in this sort of modern day era where you hear a lot of these coaches saying we're not changing anything, we're gonna stick to our principles. This is what we're doing, and you just think you sort of as a manager now you've got to adapt.
Yeah. Yeah.
You've got to, and this is why I think Carlo Ancelotti is just so successful, because like we see against Liverpool in the derby, Liverpool have like a set system and they don't break away from it regardless of the personnel. And at the end of the day, Ancelotti's seen 2 key areas to just man-mark Mane and man-mark Trent Alexander-Arnold and Andrew Robertson. And just little things like that. And we've never really seen... I mean, we've seen a system where it was like a bit of a Christmas tree, but we've never really seen an Everton team sort of go into a 4-4-2 and then switch to like a 5-3-1. It was very sort of strange, and we never... sorry, a 5-3-2, and we never really... that's just sort of like an old school manager thought.
Yeah.
Where he's come... Like where you got to give credit to like Mourinho and things like that. Like, he's come to win the game.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's not come to play and go toe to toe with these teams, because at the end of the day you can't.
Yeah.
And you hear a lot of managers say about like when they do get beat, and you hear them go, they've parked the bus and things like that. Well, they're not there to just give you an easy game. Do you know what I mean? They're there to beat you. You're in the same competition. It's sort of like how dare they do that? You know what I mean? So
yeah.
No, I think it's I think he's fantastic, and it's a shame that we have lost this year.
Yeah. Because
it's his first year, and you see him when he first come. I think a lot of people who don't know Everton, I think when they do turn up to this ground, and even when you're on the telly, you don't hear it, but when you're in the ground, it's hard to describe, and you see the gif and things like that of him saying wow and things like that. Then that's it. Yeah. But imagine that as like a 7-8-year-old lad.
Exactly.
Turning up at the ground. I mean, this is a manager who's had Champions Leagues. He's AC Milan manager, Real Madrid manager.
Yeah.
Like, he's just turned up to Goodison. He's absolute, and we've just shocked him.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Like, the sort of shock factor that we can give a man of that calibre just really shows you what Everton are all about. So I think we are. I think as well. I think the key thing is, and then the feeling that I get is sort of the feeling that we got when the Artetas, the Tim Cahill's, Gravesons and things like that were at the club. The affiliation with the players.
Yeah, spot on.
You're sort of getting the personality of the players, and the more important thing is that I think when Steve Walsh and Koeman and that come in, we brought in players, but like we brought in players like you don't really want to sign them out, but like players like Morgan Schneiderlin and things like that, they thought they were better than the club. They weren't there for Everton. They were there
for themselves.
Yeah, for themselves and to progress. And listen, I don't begrudge things like that, but my Everton anyway, was never built on that.
Yeah.
Everton always brought in players who wanted to be there. It was very, very specific players that Everton and David Moyes brought in.
Yeah. Yeah.
It was never just you hear things like David Moyes was very, very particular. He'd go and he'd want to know his background. He'd want to know what type of player he is, what person he is.
Yeah.
I mean, it's all well and good picking out players who are very good on the football pitch, but what's he like in the changing room, things like that. That was the detail that David Moyes went into, and most of the time he got it right. And listen, you're talking about a man who had buttons, chump change, really, in terms of what he was going up against. And no, I think Ancelotti's sort of got that, and he's brought players in who want to play for him, but also have now took on like the power and the gravitas of what that badge means to us and what Everton actually is. I mean, they're an absolute powerhouse, aren't they, in English football, and it's time that they start showing it.
Yeah, absolutely, and I think that's a fantastic point you just brought up there, Tom, because you look at the likes of Ben Godfrey, for example, who was, 6 or 7 months ago wasn't an Everton player, 6 or 7 months ago probably wasn't really interested in the fact that Everton hadn't beat Liverpool for 22 years at Anfield. He was playing at Norwich, he wasn't a Blue, hasn't grown up a Blue. Fast forward 6 months, this lad's come into the football club, and look at how much it meant to him when we won the other night. That emotion on his face, you'd swore he'd supported Everton all his life, you'd swore he'd been through those 22 years of hate, those Derby defeats, going to Goodison as a kid and not seeing us win, seeing us being disappointed. You'd swear that emotion was from a man who'd seen that all before, but it wasn't. Of course the emotion from myself and Tom and every other Blue and everyone watching was that of joy and excitement and screaming like Ben Godfrey was, but we've been through all of that past, we've been through those bad Derby defeats, we've been through those bad seasons, we've seen the worst of it. Ben Godfrey hasn't. Ben Godfrey 6 or 7 months ago, like I said, wasn't focused on Everton Football Club. He obviously knew Everton Football Club were, and he was probably aware that we hadn't won there for quite a long time, but he didn't have the emotional connection, because why would he? I haven't got an emotional connection to however long Norwich haven't beaten their local rivals for, because I'm not a Norwich player or I'm not a Norwich fan, but he's come into the football club, Ben Godfrey, and like I said, that emotion and that fight and that passion and that just the look on his face when that final whistle went shows how much it means to him. And I think that's an excellent point, Tom, an absolutely excellent point. Another example, Luca Dean today has come out, obviously yesterday signed his new contract, which we'll talk about in a bit more detail later on, and he said that Everton is like a wedding. You come into Everton Football Club and the fans just love you, they've made a song for me, they appreciate me, and I want to give that back to them. And you can't put a price on that, can you? Because you can have a team of fantastic individuals, you can have a team of fantastic players, but if there isn't that connection between the players and the fans, there's always going to be an issue somewhere. Look, if you've got a team of 11 unbelievable players who are winning every week and winning trophies, then maybe, you sort of think, right, okay, well, we don't really need them to have a good relationship with us because they're winning trophies on the pitch and that's what it's about. But you can't put a price on that connection between fans and players. Dominic Calvert-Lewin tweeting my team after the game. Now, that might just be a little something. On Tuesday when the stadium was announced, he was on Instagram with Spirit of the Blues blasting in his car, dancing. Same with Tom Davies, the camaraderie between players, Tom Davies and Calvert-Lewin in the dressing room or on Instagram supporting each other after the game. One thing that we were critical of prior to Carlo Ancelotti, Tom, was that we never really seemed, certainly in recent years under Koeman and Walsh, like you said, we never really seemed like we had a team of mates. There was a team of footballers who were on a lot of money, who were decent Premier League level footballers, but they never seemed like they were a team of friends who just loved each other and loved being around each other, and you'd put together in a room after the game. These lads all seem like now under Carlo, like if times were normal and everything was open and everything was fine, that after the game they'd all go out to the same restaurant, and they'd eat together, or they'd spend time with each other, they all get on with each other. You're seeing the initiation songs for Alan and Hammers, and you're seeing everybody getting involved, and it was at that point I thought, this is a group of lads here, these are fighting for each other, these are loving each other, and that's what Carlo has brought, hasn't he? And I think he's adapted that David Moyes sort of style of not just, and he said this before in interviews, by the way, not just signing a player because they're a good player or they improve the team, but signing a player who wants to play for Everton, wants to really, really understand what it's like to be an Evertonian and to love this football club and to appreciate this football club. And like I said, Carlo, one of the things that sticks in my mind when he was asked about James Rodriguez signing, and he was asked, did James want to come to Everton? And he said, look, whenever I approach a player, or the first thing I ask was, do you want to play for Everton? And if they even hesitate, then I just say, forget about it, move on. They have to say yes, absolutely. And that seems to be what Carlo's brought this season. As much as the wins against Liverpool and Arsenal and United and the players he's brought in and the way in which we've played and won games this season, you can't put a price on that camaraderie in the dressing room, can you? And it's amazing to see.
Yeah, I mean, when you think back to when Sheary did come in, and we had all this supposed talk of like we're going to basically be the next league champions and things like that, and it's sort of, for me, like when Koeman and when you look at Marco Silva to a point, Everton become very business-like.
Yeah.
We sort of lost that, like where you're saying, that spirit of the Blues kind of feeling. It become very business-like and very corporate. It become very like sort of like yeah, this is just work. This is just work. And listen, that started from the manager. As soon as Ronald Koeman come in, he basically said, I'm here for 3 years and that's it.
Yeah.
So if the manager hasn't got an affiliation with the fans or the club, then that obviously is going to seep down to the players, isn't it? And
absolutely.
When that did happen, we had none of this. We didn't have no players coming out and talking about how much they wanted to be at Everton, and you never had nothing at all. There was no real player who come out apart from your typical Colemans and things like that, with the sort of media sort of spiel that they come out of every game and things like that, and the bit of the token words that they'd say. And he said it to a point on before, I think it was either before the game or after the derby, and he was like, I'm happy that I don't have to come out and just say these usual words and things like that. But no, I think now looking at it, I mean, the sort of characters, isn't there? There's characters at the club, and grab a hold of, because at the end of the day, that's what you want. You want to be took on a journey with Everton, but you also want to know the players. I mean, when I hear stories with like people who've worked with and things like that, there's a fella called Jimmy Bradley that I used to work with, and he was a diehard Everton fan, and the stories like when we just sit and have our break and things like that he'd tell me in like the 80s. I mean, he said like Everton had like the training sort of in the summer training. They used to be in like I think it was like Gibraltar or somewhere mad like that, and Everton fans used to just jump on ferries and just go and stare. And he said he'd just be there talking to players and things like that. And things like that. So that's what you want. You want that. I mean, obviously now in this day and age, you're never going to be to that point. But I think now you sort of see it from social media posts and James Rodriguez coming in. They get it. I mean, I think it was key. I know he gets absolutely pelted, but when Anthony Gomez come in, that was sort of like the first time I've seen in a while that sort of someone actually wants to be at the club and wants to support the club. I mean, it was very strange really when you think about it, because when he did come in, he just sort of not necessarily done it on the pitch, he done it off the pitch. The things like, and that's all that Everton that'll give you time if you're playing bad.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree 100%.
Yeah, I mean, well, the thing is now when you look at it and you see certain plays like Jordan Pickford, like I know he's had a lot of stick and things. I'd just love to hear like an interview off him.
Yeah.
And just to see what like Everton means, or like just a general conversation. I mean, I don't know whether you've listened to it, but the Rio Ferdinand, where he's got Mason Holgate and Ben Godfrey on, and Holgate's talking about Everton. But listen, Holgate and like the likes of Holgate, Calvert-Lewin and things like that. We did buy them, but we bought them early. I mean, this is their professional club really, and this is what it means to them, and you hear them talking about it, and it's brilliant. And I think as well, I think the senior players like Sheamus Coleman and things like that, I mean, don't get me wrong, he's 32 now and obviously on a decline, but it's very important to try and keep them players in and around the club. I mean, Baines is still there, and you see Baines out with Tom Davies and things like that. You need these mentors, you need these players from that David Moyes era to show and teach people like what this club's all about. Because if you lose that, you lose. Like, what's the point in going the game?
Yeah, absolutely. And just on the back of that, you mentioned obviously Sheamus Coleman, who again is really taken into Everton, of course, over his decade of being here. Tom Davies, who's grown up an Evertonian, so naturally he's got that friendship with Dominic Calvert-Lewin. Dom automatically knows. Dom knows what it means to Tom Davies to win derbies. He knows what it means to Tom Davies to play. So he's sort of adopted that. I think in my opinion anyway, Tom, and I want to ask you this, I think it may be a footballing issue, certainly with, you mentioned there that, in the 80s and stuff, fans used to be able to jump on the ferry and go over to the summer camps and speak to players, and, you hear even stories years back previous to that where fans would meet players in the pub after the game and have a pint with them, or they'd see them on the bus, etc. That has obviously all changed now because football has changed, and, footballers are very much celebrities now, and they're those high figures who are very sort of disconnected, let's be honest. On a base level, footballers are disconnected to fans because they are a celebrity status, they've got a lot of money, they live in nice big houses, they are, they're not accessible. You wouldn't see a footballer in the pub, you wouldn't see a footballer, you might see them down the street, but it'd be a quick picture and then they'd be sort of off. On a match day, you couldn't just turn up and have a 20-minute conversation with Dominic Calvert-Lewin, and that's the way football is now, and I don't think Everton can help that, because that's how football is, that's how it's progressed. And like I said, footballers are on that pedestal now that maybe they weren't as years and years ago. But do you think that is something that Carlo Ancelotti has sort of looked at and maybe took notice of? Obviously, Carlo's a manager who's been in and around football since the 60s, the 70s as a player and a manager. So we've seen those eras where him as a footballer are accessible to fans. He can stand and have a conversation. As a manager, slightly less accessible but still accessible. And then obviously modern day where they are very much sort of protected to the highest hill. So do you think he's come in and sort of thought, right, first and foremost, we need to make this group of players connect with the fans? There needs to be that connection there, because like you said, under Koeman, it was Koeman and his squad and it was Evertonians, and Ronald Koeman never bought into Everton whatsoever, never ever did. And I don't necessarily think the players didn't buy into Everton. There was certain players that definitely didn't buy into Everton, but I think there was some like Calvert-Lewin and obviously Tom Davies who really wanted to, but because the manager wasn't really interested in that, there wasn't that connection. So is that something you think Carlo's looked at and gone, right, fit on the base level, we need to get this club and these players connecting with the fans, it needs to be one, so that we're all in it sort of together? Because he'll have seen the times that that fans and players were very close, and whereas now obviously it's distant, and obviously even more distant now that we can't go to the game and stuff. So for me, that seems like something he is really focused on since he's been in Everton.
Yeah, I mean it's a great point really, because it's sort of it goes under the radar, these little things. Like when he did come here, he went and seen the city. He was walking around the city. He was in the Strand at one point. Yeah. I mean, I don't even go to Strand.
And that's a brave move.
Do you know what I mean? So like he just sort of see what it is. He's the leader.
Yeah.
He's the pinnacle of the club.
Yeah.
And he has this aura about him because he's Carlo Ancelotti. And the way he took on the club, it was strange, because he come in and then next minute you just see pictures of him walking around the city, and it sort of breaks that barrier that he's not this like godlike person. He's just a person who's done very well in his career and life, and he's a special talent, and he's got this sort of what I think has gone sort of away from football, because you're seeing like we have coaches who manage teams now, and the key ingredient to being a coach or a manager is man management, and he's got that in abundance. And I think a lot of that's moving away from the game at this point, and I feel like there's a lot of head coaches who just coach the team and things like that, but not necessarily manage the team. And I think he's absolutely brilliant at that. I think Alex Ferguson was brilliant at that. You could see that over the years how well he done, and there's certain other managers. But I think the starting point was that, and it sort of broke the barrier of this is not just another high-profile elite manager just coming in to try and spend a load of money and just get Everton to Europe. No, he took it on, and he speaks about Everton like it's his first club, and it all starts from him. And I think when a manager takes on the club and he's part of it, and he's aware of what Everton is, I think that's where then the players see that, and then that's where the players get on board with it. And you see like the James Rodriguez and, you know, most Instagram posts is him in an Everton shirt. I mean, that's just crazy in itself, isn't it? And you know, and I love the fact that Dominic Calvert-Lewin and Tom Davies are having a good time and things like that. And listen, at the end of the day, they're just lads who just made it.
Yeah.
They're just young lads who are just living a dream, and it's fantastic now that the sort of getting the benefit of some success at the club.
Yeah.
So no, I think it's that's what he brings. And listen, it might be here for a long time, it might be here for a short time, but I think whatever time he does make it at Everton, I think it'll be a very successful one.
Yeah, absolutely. And you mentioned there another great point, man management. I mean, Carlo Ancelotti come in, and within, you know, a couple of weeks, a couple of months at Everton, obviously we'd seen a turnaround, we'd seen some good results, but we were also seeing some bad results, and we were putting that down to the fact that it was very much the same squad that was in the same season last season. But there was a number of times he come out and he spoke about a couple of players, Dominic Calvert-Lewin being one of them. He said, "This is one of the best strikers I've ever worked with, one of the best strikers I've known. He jumps like nobody else can. He's getting in the right areas." Fast forward months later, Dominic Calvert-Lewin has improved massively since that. Done it with Richarlison. He said, "This is a lad that will win a Ballon d'Or at one day. He's good enough to go on and be the best player in the world." Fast forward, finished the season well. Okay, didn't have the greatest start to the season, but now again scored at Anfield. He'll always be a hero. Done it with Sheamus Coleman. Come out and said Sheamus Coleman's one of the best captains I've ever worked under. Now, in all three of those instances, or ever worked with, in all three of those instances, those players, including everybody else he said that about, by the way, because I think he's probably took his arm around every player and give them that bit of praise. They'll go home, and Dominic Calvert-Lewin had gone home on that day that Carlo said that and gone, bloody hell, he sees me as one of the best strikers he's ever worked with. He's worked with Robert Lewandowski, he's worked with Cristiano Ronaldo, he's worked with Samuel Eto'o as well at one point. It might be wrong. He's worked with some of the best strikers in world football, and he's saying, I'm one of the best he's ever worked with. I could be the best. I could be that level. Then Dominic Calvert-Lewin's coming out and he's repaying. He's showing that faith that Carlo was given to him on the pitch. He's scoring goals. He's getting in the right areas. He's winning every header in the air. He's not only is he scoring goals and you know, obviously helping the team in that way, but he's working hard, he's battling. He's like I said, the Derby penalty was excellent, absolutely excellent. He got the right side that sent Alexander-Arnold, he felt a connection and he went over, and that's what you need in games like that. He's strong, he's big, he's physical. Sheamus Coleman, okay, we're all under the conclusion that Sheamus probably can't play 38 games a season and he hasn't got that stamina, but when he's playing now, he's giving it 110%. Again, proper leader on that pitch on Saturday, turned up. Sheamus Coleman's been part of many at Everton side who haven't turned up at Anfield and who have rolled over, and as Tom quite rightly said previously, earlier on, Sheamus Coleman's always been that player to come out and spread the usual media spiel of we need to do better, we need to look in the mirror at ourselves, blah blah blah. Well, he didn't have to on Saturday because he turned up as well as everybody else. And you can't put a price on Carlo coming in and having that affiliation with the city and actively going out of his way to learn about Crosby and learn about, you know, the bike ride from Crosby to Southport that he's spoken about, and the Strand and the various different areas. And you also can't put a price on a man, because I remember when he put his arm around Calvert-Lewin and said those things, every other fan that isn't an Evertonian said that he's chatting some wham there. We all thought probably a little bit too far there, but it's worked, hasn't it?
Yeah, I mean, I'll give you two examples. I mean, you take, I know we keep going on about Ronald Koeman, but it's probably a key transition there, and it's probably like the main thing for me is where Everton just lost who Everton were. Yeah. But if you take Ronald Koeman's sort of management of Ross Barkley and compare it to what Ancelotti's done with these young lads, there's non-comparison. Yeah. I mean, at the end of the day, the Ronald Koeman effect on Ross Barkley and the attitude that he had towards him and the way he approached that situation, in the end, Ross Barkley left the club.
Yeah.
So that's what I mean by man management. You've got to know the type of player that you're dealing with. I mean, listen, you could say the things that you could say to certain other players, maybe that Koeman has said and publicly said about Ross Barkley.
Yeah.
But that went completely the wrong way for him.
Yeah.
But in terms of what Ronald Koeman's done, all it is for me is that if you start being negative, then the club and the team are going to be negative, and you sort of fester in this sort of negativity, and it's going to rot, and it's just going to go through and seep through every player in the end. Because if the manager's not happy and the manager being negative and about players, listen, players talk.
Yeah.
Like if a manager comes out in the public and has said a negative word about a certain and specific player, players are going to talk.
Yeah.
There's groups of players there that we've seen in the past where players do get managers out.
Yeah, absolutely.
So you've got to have them on board. And when Ancelotti comes through, and listen, it must have been such a surreal moment for Dominic Calvert-Lewin to sit there, and you're looking at Carlo Ancelotti and he's telling you're going to be one of the best strikers and things like that, and you're like. He must have just walked away and sat in his car, mustn't he? And just thought, what is just going on here? Mustn't he? He must
himself.
He must have just thought, this fella's off his rocker here. But that breeds positivity.
Yeah.
I mean, even when you're in school and a teacher says to you, oh, that's brilliant, that's fantastic work, and it gives you this spark to go do it and go do more and go work harder. When a sort of teacher's negative and think you don't want to go in the classroom, you don't want to be there, you start messing about, you don't like sort of
focus.
As I say, you don't focus, but you don't give them the respect that they deserve. Because listen, when you're 15, 16, or like, and someone's being negative, you've got this attitude about you where you're like, oh, forget them, I don't care. That goes through even into your early 20s and things like that. But when a manager of that caliber shows you that much respect and things like that, you want to go work for them. You'll go through a brick wall for them. And I think when you hear the stories and like things like Lewin staying behind and saying, and he's doing extra things like that, that's just all from the manager.
Absolutely.
That's just the manager installing belief. And maybe at the start of when he did say it, he sort of you look at it and you think we were like, oh, I don't think that'll be the case. But he's seen the sort of attitude and the drive that lad's got.
Absolutely.
And it's gonna get to him there, and you can't really fathom like the sort of player in the space of a year that he's become. I mean, it's a crazy development and transformation. And listen, he's what? He's only still what, 23, 24. I think he's in March or April, something like that. I mean, he's still a young lad. He's still got a lot to learn, and you seen it when he come on against Liverpool.
Yeah, exactly. He changed the game, didn't he?
But he changes the team.
Yeah.
The team gets a lift. That's just what a talisman is, and he's sort of becoming that talisman, isn't he?
No, I agree completely. I agree, and I think positivity is something that you've just mentioned, and Carlo come in from the first day, even though we were, look at this point, obviously Duncan Ferguson had added that little bit of belief and positivity and that emotion of what it means to be an Evertonian, but and you can't take away that Duncan Ferguson period, by the way, so I'm not saying take away that period, but going back fantastic. 3 weeks before Duncan, when Marco Silva was managing, we were all sat here thinking we could get relegated here, this could be a really struggling season, and Duncan comes in, he instills that bit of belief, that bit of emotion, and Carlo comes in and he instills this wave of positivity that these players hadn't had for a long time. And you speak about positivity and negativity and Ronald Koeman, and you mentioned a really good point there about players speaking and players talking to each other and players being friends. We, I think, as fans, automatically maybe subconsciously believe that if a player's not very good, he ain't going to be mixing with the very good players, he's probably not mates with them. But the truth of the matter is, no matter how good a player is or how bad a player is, they could be best mates with the best player at your club, they could be best mates with some of the lads in the academy, they could be best mates with one of the coaches. The players mix, and it's quite often that, you know, even the players that you might look at and think, right, they need to be moved out because they're not good enough, they could be best mates with the player that you want to keep for years and years because he is, you know, the best player at the football club. And I think Ronald Koeman, for me, his Everton career failed when he come out publicly and spoke about Umar Niasse and said, oh, he hasn't got a lock-in, and if he wants to play football and he's got to have to go and find a different club. And Umar Niasse come out in an interview, I think when he was at Hull, and just spoke about how he was treated, and it was awful, and he wasn't even allowed to sit at the same table and eat with the players, he wasn't allowed to be in the same room as the players. It was bullying effectively, and like I said, you know, it maybe goes under the radar at the time because at the time Ronald Koeman had a decent start for Everton. But you then looked at, you know, Instagram posts after the game and posts on Christmas Day or, you know, various different celebrations, and Oumar Niasse was always with the best players at the club. He was always there. He seemed like a figure who was best friends with everybody. He was just a nice fella, and I still think it to this day. Do I think he was a good enough footballer to be at Everton? No. Do I think he was a decent fella? Absolutely, because he seemed to get on with everybody. Every meal you'd go, oh, there's Zisagana Gay, there's Ron, there's X, there's Y, there's Z, there's everyone enjoying the time there. Oh, there's Niasse there as well. He must be dead close to them. And like you said, you know, once a manager comes out and publicly says he isn't good enough, he's not sitting with us, he can't even be in the same room as us, the best players go, hang on, that's my mate. What are you doing seating my mate like that? You know, even you're saying I'm good enough. Well, I don't really want to work for you now, because whether you think he's good enough or not, he's a decent lad. He's always bringing spirit. He's a good character. He's my mate, and you've just treated him that poorly. Whereas Carlo Ancelotti, on the other hand, with, let's say, Yannick Bolasie, for an example, he didn't come out and completely remove Yannick Bolasie from Everton. He said to Yannick Bolasie and come out publicly and said, we're going to help him find a new club. He's not in the plans for the future, unfortunately, for him. He can still come in, he can still train, he can still sit and eat with the players, he can still work with the players. And I know Yannick's come out before, since then and said some stuff, but Carlo Ancelotti publicly come out and said, no, we're going to help him find a new club, we're going to help him move on in his career. He's still welcome to come in and do training and work out. And Yannick Bolasie you've seen pictures of Yannick Bolasie at Finch Farm, still working, still you know, sort of keeping himself fit, and then the club helped him move on to Middlesbrough, of course, on loan, and he's going to further his career then. So that's the difference between, it's not, nobody's saying as a manager you'd have to come in and go, right, everybody's good enough. You can think, right, that lad's not quite good enough, but it's the way you deal with that situation, isn't it? And like you said, these players are all friends with each other. No matter how good or bad they are, the best player in the club might be friends with the player. You think, how has he got a contract? But so that's how you deal with that situation, isn't it? To not upset the dressing room and to keep everybody happy.
Yeah, I think another perfect example of the sort of difference in man management. I think the whole Niasse thing was just absolutely disgusting, wasn't it, really? I mean, when you do actually think about it, like, you're sort of swept up in just what Everton are doing, really, in the league and things like that, and you're too busy thinking that. But when you actually do look back, and in hindsight, you think that lad just got absolutely tried to get bullied out of this club. And listen, a good thing really for like kids watching or things like that is the sort of mentality that Oumar Niasse come back with. I mean, at the end of the day, karma for me, really, because he had to go rely on Oumar Niasse, and Oumar Niasse basically saved Ronald Koeman's job to a certain point, didn't he? And that was basically like two fingers up to him. And you knew when you sat there at the ground, no way in the world he wanted to bring him on. No way.
Absolutely.
No way. Not a chance. You just knew it. You just knew he had sense. But the crowd would start singing it and things like that, and he'd come on and score and just lit the place on fire, didn't he? And basically saved it. So.
But that was sorry, just to jump in, that was sort of a sour feeling around the club, because the whole crowd turned on the manager, if you like, and sort of wanted this player who'd been completely frozen out to come on, and we all wanted Oumar Niasse to put two fingers up to Ronald Koeman on that day, because he proved them wrong. But we should have all sort of felt, hang on, this isn't probably going the right way then, because we've turned on the manager here, we've wanted the manager to look silly.
Well, that's exactly my point. It's positivity.
Yeah.
Everton through fan base, through anything, and in that period was just so negative. It was just a very, very negative club, and anything we did, anything we didn't do, it was just very and it was becoming very nasty sometimes. I mean, I think the icing or the cherry on the cake, you'd say, was Sam Allardyce, where everyone just lost faith, didn't he? And everyone was just done and dusted. I think a lot of people were debating whether to get rid of the season tickets at that point, I'll be honest with you. And you look back and then you just see this glowing silver locks on a white horse bouncing an Italian stallion, don't you? And he's just lit it. It's a crazy thing in football, because it's only a few years ago that, and he's only been here a year.
Yeah, exactly.
And it's just, and like you mentioned before, I think we're sort of skating over the Duncan Ferguson's sort of input into this team. I mean, he brought back that sort of fire and sort of passion what we've all got for Everton.
Yeah.
If you could put all the passion of what all the fans think into a man, it's Duncan Ferguson, and he's basically one of us. He absolutely lives and breathes this club, and you see it against the derby, and you see in the derby, and you're seeing what this club meant to him and what this club is all about, and it's like a family atmosphere, and that sort of run he went on. And even so, I thought he was brilliant with what he was coming out with. Sky were trying to push this sort of narrative where, do you want like this stupid media thing where he wanted him to be the manager and thing, and he come out and said, no, I don't want it. I want the best man to be at this club. This club is more important to me than what that manager role is for him. So I thought that was a fantastic thing, because a lot of people would just sort of ran away with that in that situation. I think a lot of us would have. You're going on a bit of a winning streak. It's absolute. The place is just all of a sudden bouncing and rocking, and you've got that Everton fight back again. And listen, a lot of people have run away with that, but he kept his head, and I think it's fantastic. And another man management move that Carlo was bringing in Duncan Ferguson to his backroom staff.
Assistant manager.
Yeah, it was just, see, when you look back and you just think of the moves, Ancelotti, it's simplistic, but it's sort of genius.
Yeah, absolutely, and they've got, there's that trio there, isn't he? Carlo, David, and Dunk, who are literally like the perfect combination of a management trio that you'd need. And I just remember on Duncan Ferguson, obviously Carlo Ancelotti has clearly come in and seen the emotion. I mean, after Saturday's result, he said I think the happiest person at the club was Duncan Ferguson. You've seen him in the dressing room, you see the pictures of him on the pitch, and the fella's in tears. He's literally in tears because he knows how much that meant. He is Mr. Everton, you're right, and it's not manufactured, it's not there for the cameras, it's pure emotion of what it means to be at this football club. And in that interview you were talking about before with Ben Godfrey and Mason Allgate, Ben Godfrey talks on Duncan Ferguson, and he says Carlo is, quite quiet. He obviously shouts when he needs to shout, but he's usually quite a tame, quiet manager, whereas Duncan Ferguson's the one who'll go apeshit if a cone's not in the right place, or he'll want everything to be done absolutely perfectly. And I think Carlo's come in and thought, right, okay, I need somebody who is almost the opposite of me in terms of emotion. Not that Carlo hasn't got the emotion, but he just doesn't show it in the same way as Duncan Ferguson show it. And Carlo, big props to Carlo as well, obviously has come in and gone, right, he'll be perfect for those games when we're losing or we're not performing well or the players aren't really doing much, because he'll be able to go, what's going on here? Why aren't you doing this? Why aren't you doing that? So it's the perfect combination. And David, obviously, I know we spoke about him briefly a couple of weeks ago, and Carlo had an interview when he first come into Everton, I think with Sky, and he was asked about David, and he basically worded it is David there just because he's your son and you want to give him a bit of experience? And he said no, he's not at all. He's worked with me at PSG, he's worked with me at Bayern, he's worked with me at Napoli. He said David Ancelotti is here because a lot of coaches and a lot of assistant managers and a lot of people around the club feel like they haven't got the right to say no to me. This is Carlo speaking. He said they feel like they can't really say no. They can't really tell me that's wrong. They can't really tell me that isn't working because of what I've won. Whereas David will turn up and say, no, that's wrong, do it that way. And that's why he's in there, because he's not afraid to say, no, you need to change that isn't working. And that's the connection they have. But that Carlo and Dunk connection is, again, you can't put a price on it, can you? It's just perfect for Everton at the moment.
Yeah, I mean, like you say, it's the perfect blend. I mean, I genuinely don't see anyone who'd want to argue with Duncan Ferguson.
Yeah, Jurgen Klopp apparently.
I mean, he'd be running very quickly if once Dunk starts getting a bit out of his plamoni. But yeah, I mean, going on to David, I mean, he's sort of gone under the radar this season, hasn't he? I mean, his setup in set pieces has been fantastic. I think Carlo gives him a lot of leeway, doesn't he? And a lot of strings to go and do what he wants, and that's perfect. I mean, where you're saying sort of like, is he here because he's your son and things like that? I mean, when you look at it, like, even me myself and my dad, like, we argue all the time about first team and things like that, and if you're shouting at certain players, you tell you're swearing at each other at some point, you know what I mean? But like, who else can you do that with?
Exactly.
Do you understand what I'm saying? Like, where he says, like, there's Carlo Ancelotti, the manager, and the trophies and everything that someone sees, and then David just sees his dad.
Yeah.
So at the end of the day, you got to tell your dad, aren't you? So really, that's just basically it. So I think it's a fan. Listen, David Ancelotti's going to be probably one of the best coaches in world football at certain point. I mean, look at the experience and look at who he's got as a mentor. Do you know what I mean? He's been at PSG. He's been everywhere with him.
Yeah.
So it's unfathomable to just like sort of brush aside because he's there. Like, that's just not even in the mindset of. So why would someone, as in, well, you could just take any job like an architect. Why would you just love? Oh yeah, bring me lads in. Like, hold on a minute, can't even draw a circle. Do you understand what I'm saying? Definitely. It's just nonsense. But you see it in all walks of life. A lot of people, like dads or certain electricians, and then they bring the lad on, and then the lad's very good at the job. It just happens. It's just sort of that sort of connection you have, and it's a lot of things where you can say you can go to coaching courses and things like that, but experience, you'll never get anything more better than experience.
That's it, mate.
And that's exactly what he's getting.
That's it. And I couldn't agree with you more, mate. I couldn't agree with you more. And, you know, David is of an age that if he was a player, he'd probably still be playing. He'd probably still be, you know, coming towards the end of his career maybe, but he'd still be playing. He's not a player, and he's had the experience of working at some of the best clubs in world football next to his dad, working with some of the best players. So I agree. I think that fella, if he becomes a manager, will go on to be one of the best in world football because he's had that experience, and that partnership of him, Carlo, and obviously Dunk is so important. And like you said about Dunk as well, just to touch on him, I do want to talk about your job as well, because I think that's really important. But just to touch on Dunk, I've got so much respect for Duncan Ferguson for coming out in those interviews when he was pushed by BT and Sky and everybody else to say, and it'd have been very easy, I'm an Evertonian, Tom's an Evertonian, everybody watching's an Evertonian, Dunk's an Evertonian. It'd have been very easy for him to say, yeah, you know what, we've just beaten Chelsea at home, the emotion was great, the ball boys running up the pitch, I want this job, I want to be the manager here. But he didn't. He put the club before his own the club ahead of his own ambition and his own sort of want, and he sat there and thought, no matter how much I might want the job, no matter how big that job will be for me, the club doesn't need me, it needs the best manager. And Carlo and Duncan Ferguson come out, and this was at a time, by the way, that Carlo wasn't rumoured to be the next manager of Everton. The rumours were David Moyes, who has done very, very well at West Ham, ironically, but none of us really wanted David Moyes back. Eddie Howe, who again, was sort of a big no-go. I think Mark Hughes was in the conversation, and Duncan Ferguson come out at the end of the game against Chelsea and on a number of occasions and said, I want Everton to go and get the best manager for Everton Football Club, the manager that's going to take them to the next level, take us to the next level and win. And he didn't say, I want that on the promise that I'll be the assistant manager. He said, I want, whether I'm here or not, I want Everton to go and get the best man for the job. And we went out and we got the best man for the job, and ultimately, I think it'd have been very easy for Everton as well and the board to say, yeah, give it to Dunk, he won't want much money, the emotions there, the fans have bought into it, we've had a couple of good games, we won't need to go and search for the manager, give it to Dunk. But he made the decision for the board, didn't he? He come out and said, no, I don't want it, I want Everton to go and get the best man for the job. And as if we didn't have enough respect for Duncan Ferguson anyway, that just took it to a whole nother level, didn't it?
Yeah, I mean, it's just, what that man means to this club, it won't really, I mean, at the end of the day, he's probably going to get a statue outside Bramley-Moore, isn't he? And he fully deserves it. I mean, there's not really anyone else who you sort of rattle your brain through and think, apart from Dixie D and things like that, who else deserves a statue outside? I mean, it's a shame that it's going to not be outside Goodison Park. Maybe it is when it gets all sort of revamped and things like that. Maybe that's a perfect spot for him. But when it's all said and done, I think Duncan Ferguson will just live on in the memory of Everton in tandem with it. Yeah. And I think it'll that's sort of what is going to be the the defining moment for Duncan Ferguson. Not necessarily, I mean, his career was great and all that, but I think this is going to be sort of his defining moments at Everton.
Yeah.
And listen, I just want him. I just want to see him lifting a trophy at some point.
Oh, it'd be amazing, wouldn't it?
They fully deserve it.
Yeah.
Same with Sheamus Coleman.
Yeah.
I wished the likes of Jagielka and
Baines.
Baines fully deserved it. I thought at one point he was going to get it, but unfortunately the stars never aligned at that point. But I just hope at least one of them out of that whole generation gets it, because if one gets it, they all get it.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I just hope before Coleman's sort of career at Everton stops, I hope it gets put on into a trophy.
Yeah, absolutely. Like you said, he deserves that as much as anyone, and he's given us, his career effectively, and the loyalty he's shown us, and not just on the pitch. He's an incredible role model off the pitch. He's Everton through and through, and you see how much it means to him, and a trophy at the end of it will be exceptional for Sheamus. Well, we'll move on then to your job. You obviously work within football, again a dream that a lot of football fans have. I think it's, well, if I can't be a footballer, let me do something within football. I don't want to do it a disservice, mate. So do you want to explain what your job is, what your job role is, what it entails, what you get to do on a day-to-day basis?
Yeah, basically what it was. Where, funny enough, I had the same impression nearly. I mean, I was following a lad on Twitter, on Toffee TV as well. It was El Pavotti and Andy McGregor who sort of sparked or sort of put that pathway in place for me. I remember when I first sort of had the sort of light bulb moments where I'd been to college, I'd done all my football things, I've got sort of A-level sides of it and things like that, and I was looking at uni, but I never really wanted to go to uni. I wanted to sort of just go straight into a club and things like that, and I went to like interviews even for Everton and things like that, and never worked out. So I thought I sort of fell out of love with the whole sort of idea of it. It sort of become reality, and you sort of get the realization what football was about and things like that. So I could never really push that door down. So I pulled away from it for a good few years. I went and worked as a stonemason in a granite yard. I mean, talk about an absolute mad change and things like that. But that sort of job sort of spurred me on, because the cold nights and the cold days and standing in a yard where it's freezing cold and you're grinding away with water and things, it's just it's not for the weak-hearted and things like that. So that sort of spurred me on, and I was sort of I remember, funny enough, the weird thing about it is that the thing that sparked it was where I was riding to work and on my bike, and I fell off and broke my arm.
Oh, bloody hell.
So that was sort of like, it was weird, because even today it's sort of a bit hard to do and hard to use and things like that. But as soon as I broke it, I realised, and the lads who I worked with, shout out to Tony Ferries, if you want Granite and all that, they're the ones to go for. Yeah, but the lad Mike, I rang him and he sort of picked me up in the van and took me back, and I remember just as soon as I fell, I thought, no, yeah. But luckily enough, I know not a lot of people are listening to this, but, well, probably a few good million.
Let's hope so.
My mum works in for Zachley Hospital, and she works in the A&E department, so I got sort of VIP treatment and got put through pretty quickly, under the radar. So and I remember sat there, and I had my top off and everything, and sat there, and then I just looked at the X-ray and things like that, and he said, yeah, it's broke, it's fractured. And I looked at it, and he sort of described it as like someone hitting your shoulder with a hammer. And it was just like, well, what do I do now? I couldn't move or anything like that, but sort of, I was just sat at home from that point, just to like carry it on. I sort of like sat at home and just like was watching YouTube and things like that. I never really had any, apart from work, I never really had any other sort of passions really. And I just started watching Toffee TV. I was watching a little bit now and then, but I just started watching it more and more. And I think, and at the time, Andy was on it and talking about recruitment and things like this, and I was thinking like, oh no, I always used to like it. Like, the weird thing is when you look at it, like little daft things of like Football Manager and like I used to always have an interest in like other leagues, I used to every year. Apart from Everton's transfers, it was a weird thing, but when you think about it, it was pretty helpful really, because I'd sort of sit there and go through the French transfers. I'd look at every single club in each league: French, Italian, Portuguese, German, Austrian, Switzerland. I used to go through every single one, just see what players are what and things like that. And you used to just watch them on YouTube and things like that. But yeah, anyway, it went on from there. So once I it was a bit of a dark time really at that point, because it was basically, I was just sat there, and it was a mental bit of a mental strain in my life really, and I sort of come away from that a bit scarred really, and I sort of had a bit of an epiphany one time when I was away with my girlfriend on holiday, and I just sat there and thought, right, I'm just gonna start a blog. I'm just gonna as soon as I sort of sat there on the beach, and it was weird. I was just sat there, and I just started writing down things, what I wanted to do in my life, and like what sort of goals I want to achieve and what I want to do. Because I've always, probably many other young lads sitting here now wondering what they want to do with their lives. Listen, I'm nearly 30 now, and it's to a certain point I didn't really know what I wanted to do with my life anyway. So it's kind of hard to find that sort of pathway. And listen, if you can find something that you're passionate about and something that you want to do for the rest of your life, that's brilliant. But not a lot of people get that. A lot of people think that just comes naturally, and but there's a lot of people out there that are still sat there today wondering, like, I don't want to do this, but what's sort of me passion and things like that. So as soon as I landed, I went to Mykonos. It was lovely, by the way. Great time. Really nice. If anyone wants to go there, it's lovely. But I come back, landed straight away, and as soon as I landed, I just started researching. I looked at Andy's sort of blog, and I sort of looked at other blogs and how they're doing it and things like that, because I had something in me that I knew I had, but it's hard to sort of put it into words and sort of expression, because you're a bit of a novice there. You don't really know what clubs are looking for, and you don't really know what things. So it was a fantastic sort of template to go off. So I had the money, so I just bought a subscription with Wisecout, and I set up a blog and set up a website, and I didn't necessarily want to just do Everton and sort of go down the route of sort of wanting to be like, I wanted, the weird thing is, I wanted to make it hard for myself. I wanted to do something where
it's a challenge.
Yeah, I didn't necessarily, because listen, at the end of the day, it's very easy to write about Everton because I've seen them for so many years, and I've seen I could break Everton down very easily and things like that. And maybe this summer I might do like a blog about Everton, the recruitment side of it. But I didn't necessarily want to do that because I've seen a lot of people doing that. So my idea was sort of like, well, how do you stand out away from the crowd sort of thing? And I went down the route of unknown players. And my first player that I'd done was a young lad from Croatia. He was that was my very first one. I sort of went down the because now it's like a lot of data, and I'm really into the data, but some people sort of go down the route of just full data, stats and things like that, and they don't necessarily watch players. Like, I think at the moment I've got like the perfect blend of like I actually watch players, and it's sort of the bias sort of doesn't come in from stats where you necessarily think, right, well, he's a very, like, you look at, for example, Gylfi Sigurdsson, and he creates a lot, but what in them situations, what situations is it like? And things like that. As pass, you could see someone's passing and it could be like 87%, but how is it? What is it? Is
Yeah.
it just sideways passing? Is it forward passing? Is it progressive passing? Do you know, things like
Yeah.
that? So I got fully on board with the data side, and yeah, I'd done a first blog, and I just had an old Twitter, and I just sort of transformed it into like what it is now. And just funny thing is, the T Logic name just come from my girlfriend. Really, I was like, what can I sort of do? Like, you're rattling your brain
Yeah.
and thinking like you want to go down that route. I didn't necessarily want to be put my name out there because it's not necessarily you wanted to put you in a sense that you want to hide it. You're just a bit not scared in the sense. You're just a bit like, I can put it out and not necessarily people know who I
Yeah.
am.
Yeah.
They just see the name and they don't really, and that's it. And
Yeah.
yeah, I done it. I remember sitting up all night, not panicking in a sense, just like going over it constantly, like reading it. And then once I sent that, like, clicked that publishing thing, that was it. And I sent it to Andy. He retweeted it. And then I done another one. And again, he sort of, I mean, fair play to Andy. I mean, it was just a random lad who's just
Yeah.
messaged him, who's sort of thing. And fair, I can't give as much credit as I can to Andy. I mean, he's really, really helped me with this sort of pushing this career to what I want it to be. And yeah, I've done another one that he was impressed with that, and then I sort of started doing. To be honest with you, I only done about maybe four, five
Yeah.
blogs in the space. This was in a space of 6 months, maybe.
Yeah.
And yeah, Andy sort of messaged me and said like, there's a job going with Insight Markets, who he works for and things like that. And listen, I've got imposter syndrome at the best of times, but certain things like that come up and you're like, no way am I ready,
Yeah.
or no way am I good enough, or things like that for to do like a professional thing and things like that. Because it was sort of like just a bit of an itch to scratch,
Yeah.
really.
Yeah.
And yeah, I sat there and thought about it and just thought, yeah, why not go for
Yeah.
it? Because a lot of the times you sort of do things in your life and your brain runs away with you, and you sort of what's the word? You sort of like talk yourself out of
Yeah.
things, don't you?
Yeah.
In a lot of the
Yeah.
times, and the best like sort of advice I could give to young lads and things like that, like, it's just do it.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Just genuinely, don't even think, even if it's not absolutely 100% bang on standard brilliant. Just do it and you'll learn, and once you start going and going, it'll come up to it. But yeah, I sent an application in for the market insights, and yeah, it took me on board. But unfortunately, and the way life works, I mean, global pandemic just sort of comes
Yeah.
involved, doesn't it?
Yeah.
So I think the sort of role and the sort of direction of what things go just shift and things like that. So I spent like basically a year with Andy and Tim and Ram and things like that, and Kev, who run it, and Jay, who I think a lot of people know. Jay is BA and
Yeah.
analytics. He's just been took on by Luton Town as the head analyst. So fantastic, really. So there is pathways for people off Twitter,
Yeah.
and there's a lot of people who there are far, in my opinion, far sort of. I've got a lot of more sort of talented than me in terms of using like internet and Python and things like that. And
Yeah.
but I think the one thing that sort of keeps me out of the crowd is that I can spot a player and I can back it up with certain data things.
Yeah.
And the key thing that I learned from market insights is just development, and just not necessarily seeing a player and go, he's brilliant, he'll do at Everton,
Yeah.
for example.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's not necessarily that. It's just sort of like, well, how will he perform at the club? What's he like in the system? What's his general like attributes that will bring to the club and things like that. And it was fascinating to really be a part of sort of a professional side. And listen, I had a fantastic 12 months with him, but obviously I've have to leave for like financial reasons and things like that, because like I say, global pandemic and things like that, I mean, it's not necessarily a good thing that to sort of leave your full-time job to go be an analyst in football. So yeah, I mean, from now point, yeah, I've left, but I'm sort of taking a step back and just working out what pathway I want to do,
Yeah.
because at the end of the day, there's no real time limit on it.
Yeah.
There's no real sort of thing. I mean, I'm gonna go away. I've got all kinds of books to read and try and do courses and things like that to just improve and network and things like that. There's a great sort of community on Twitter.
Yeah.
So it's really been good. So yeah, I'm just gonna probably go back to sort of putting work out on blogs and things like that, and obviously get on more podcasts and things like that, and hopefully in the end it works out.
Definitely. Well, I think it's a really, really inspirational story, to be honest, mate, because like you said, there'll be a lot of young lads and ladies and just, you know, adults growing up who maybe have got a passion and have got a you know, something they really enjoy and something that they really take time out to do, and then when that opportunity arises to maybe do it on a as a full-time job or earn a bit of money off it, there's always a risk. There's a risk with everything in life. You know, if you leave one job and go to another, there's always a massive risk. And I think like I said, I think you've got a really, really inspirational, fantastic story there, is to stay, you know, go for it, because this was, like you said, the passion as a young lad that you know, you'd went and got your qualifications, you'd really put your heart into it, and then it just sort of faded out a little bit because life happens, and you've got to go and, you know, work and do what, you know, pays you. And then a key moment in your life happened where you know, you break a bone and you've got a lot of spare time to yourself, and you just think, you know what, let me just go and reignite this sort of passion. And then it turns into a full-time job, and you know, you'd have a fantastic 12 months in it. And like I said, you know, I absolutely love having you on the channel, because, you know, sometimes I can sit here and, you know, somewhere you can say, who do you want to bring in, Cam? And I might go, oh, Max Aarons or Jack Grealish, because I've seen them or I know them or I've watched them in the Premier League. And then we bring Tom on, and Tom just lists off these list of names of players who we, you know, I personally haven't heard much of, but they're the players, they're the hidden gems. And I also think, just to compare you to Marcel Brands, I also think that's what Marcel Brands has sort of done with Everton, hasn't he? Is we might look and go and get him, go and get him, and then Marcel Brands pulls up with a Ben Godfrey or a Jarrad Branthwaite or an Arsene Kunku, and we all sort of think, who's this lad? And then, you know, fast forward a couple of months, and certainly in Ben Godfrey's case, he's looking like one of the best young centre-backs in the country, and he's absolutely vital to our Everton side now. So, no, I think it's a really inspirational story, mate, and obviously I've got a lot of time for that, and people who take those risks and just sort of focus on what they want to do and go and achieve that. And yeah, like I said, you know, it's excellent when we come on the channel and we talk about transfers and we talk about players and you know, different types of players that I might not necessarily have seen. And I also love the way in which you work in terms of looking at players and actually watching players, because you're right, you know, stats are great and they say a lot, and, you know, XG and all of that stuff says a lot, but you mentioned then, you know, a player could have 86% passing rate, but he might just be going and standing next to whoever's got the ball and doing little 1-2s and not actually doing much whatsoever. So I think it's vitally important that, like you said, you watch those players, because you could say, oh, you know, I don't know, Arsenal should sign this midfielder because he's got a better pass rate than anybody else, but that specific midfielder mightn't do much on the pitch. He might just, you know, pass it backwards or get it and give it sideways. Whereas when you watch a player, you think, yeah, you know, they've got that extra bit of quality. They've got that vision to see that pass. They've got that quality to put that ball into the box. And you know, I think it's an absolutely fantastic way of working, mate, and it's a real inspirational story to anybody listening, as to that if you've got a passion in anything in life, be it football, be it, you know, I don't know, my girlfriend makes like resin coasters and keyrings and all stuff like that, and I always say to her, if an opportunity comes up where, I don't know, a big company or you know, somebody else may come and say, this is an opportunity to make this a living, go for it, because that's your passion. And like I said, there's a lot of different examples of that, be it football, be it people who make cakes, be it people who, you know, write blogs on other things, and I think taking those risks is a part of life, and you've done it, mate, and you've been successful in it, and it's great to see. And like I said, you're welcome to come on the channel at any point in the future. Just message me. In fact, I might just give you the details and go on, Tom, go and do a little stream. On to sort of in connection with your role then, and your job obviously is recruitment and bringing players in and improving football clubs. And I know, obviously, I agree, by the way, in what you said about not focusing on Everton too much and wanting to challenge yourself and wanting to get out there and learn, you know, about other leagues and other countries, etc. But a player that has been linked with Everton Football Club over the last 24, 48 hours or so, a player that I think a lot of Evertonians would love to have at the club. I didn't think that we'd be linked with him. I think Marcel Brands maybe would have thought he's probably going to cost too much, but Fabrizio Romano, who is a very reliable source, come out and said Everton are interested in Norwich right back Max Aarons, of course, best friends with Ben Godfrey, brilliant young right back, played in the Premier League last season with Norwich. I think Fabrizio Romano then come out on a podcast and said Everton are really, really interested in him and want to sign him, but let's see if they'll pay the asking price, which I think was somewhere between 30 and 40 million, 35 and 40 million euros, so whatever that equates in pounds. What were your sort of initial thoughts on that? Is Max Aarons somebody that you'd like to bring in, or do you sort of think he might cost a little bit too much and there's alternative options?
Yeah, I mean, I've been going back and forth about Max Aarons for over the last year. I've had a lot of discussions with certain people, like and analysts and things like that, and you hear different sort of opinions, and you can sort of watch a player too much, and then you can sort of pick out his faults, and you can sort of focus on things like that. But at the end of the day, when I do look at it, and you see, the thing is with me, it's not necessarily my job to do it, but I can't help but think it, and you sort of weigh up the price to compare to what he's going to give you. So, say for example, you're looking at, I try and sort of compare situations where you're sort of looking at it and you think, well, if he's going to cost, say, what would you say, like 30, 40 million?
Something along those lines, yeah.
Well, when you break that down into 3 to 4 years, if that's the way Everton are going to structure that deal, and at the age he's at, it's sort of, you look at it and you think, well, he's English for one, which is a massive sort of point for clubs in England anyway. So, like, you look at it and you think, the sort of, he's played maybe tops like 90 to maybe coming up to 100 games in the last like 3 years. He hasn't really been injury prone at all, so that's a solid point as well. So you're looking at thinking, right, is he inexperienced? No. Because is he inexperienced in the league? No. He played 36 games for Norwich
last season.
He played 3,492 minutes.
Yeah.
I mean, that's just unheard of, really. I mean, a lot of players don't really necessarily play that much, but I can sort of equate it to, and I was looking at it the other night and sort of say, like, I put a tweet out a few weeks ago and say I wouldn't go near that price, but if Everton have got it, and if if that doesn't affect Everton's recruitment with other talent, then you go do the deal. Because I looked at sort of other right backs and other English right backs, and you look at it and you think, well, who sort of could be not similar, just like a sort of price tag and sort of thing. And if you look at Aaron Wan-Bissaka at Manchester United, you sort of can compare, because at the end of the day, Max Aarons was in the league when Wan-Bissaka went to Manchester United, and he's 2 years. I think he's 2 years older than he is. He's 2 years older than Max Aarons. And when you break down data, they're not necessarily a million miles away.
Yeah.
Maybe in terms of defensive work, but you're not looking at sort of 20% differences.
Yeah.
You're sort of looking at a 3-4% swing. Now, when you look at that and you think, oh yeah, he's a better defender and things like that, but then when you go watch Max, he is a good defender. I wouldn't say he's absolutely world class, because his strengths are necessarily in other departments, his progressive runs, his crossing, his things like that. So his attack and play. So when you look at it that way, you can see, right, well, he's 21. He's still got a lot of development to be, but when he's put similar stats as Aaron Wan-Bissaka has at Manchester United compared to what he was at Norwich, in my personal opinion, the way I think, my thought process is, well, if he's at a better club, then his stats are obviously going to go better.
Yeah.
It's just in a
with better
system
players,
where Well, exactly, and sort of, you look at it and you think, well, he was fantastic at Norwich in the Championship, and he was only 19 years of age. So then when he comes into the league, similar as what Ben Godfrey did. Ben Godfrey went under the radar, but a lot of, like, say, analysis and recruitment analysis seen Ben Godfrey. I even looked at Ben Godfrey, but it was not necessarily sort of a financial route I thought Everton would go down, because 20 million to Everton, especially after sort of getting the hands burnt with Moise Keane, you sort of think, oh, they won't. And plus as well, I don't think a lot of us thought that Everton had the money to do it. But Aaron sort of. I remember watching him in his first game against Liverpool, and when Norwich played Liverpool and they were playing sort of expand. But he was one out of them where you think, oh, this lad catches the eye. So with me, really, my sort of like thought process, like, if they catch the eye, then I'll sort of jot them down, and then I'll go see what the data's saying, basically, and just to see if, like, sort of, if the data can back up what I'm looking at, is the most important thing, because we can all say, oh yeah, he's a very good player, but listen, at the end of the day, facts can only back that up. You know, we can all have our biases on certain players, but if the stats don't really back it up in facts terms, then
absolutely
it doesn't really work. So yeah, I mean, with Max, I think I've been yo-yoing a lot over the last year with him, but when you think about it, and you think and the other talents of English football right backs, I think he's going to be probably up there with them. I mean, I remember you mentioning, like, Lamptey and things like that. I think he's got far more ability than what Lamptey has. I think Lamptey's very, the way Brighton play is a three at the back with wingers, high wingers. So he's very good. He's very good profile for that sort of thing. I mean, in terms of Max, I feel like he's a bit more versatile in sort of formation wise.
No, I agree.
So I think when you sort of break down Max's technical ability and tactical intuition and things like that, and you sort of say, no, he can read the game. He knows how to play different systems, and he's got that ability to go beat a man. Sort of like a young Sheamus Coleman, but with a bit of an end product in a sense. I mean, if you can get a lad in at 21, when you break it down to for like 30 million, maybe even do like wheel and dealing things. You never know. With Marcel Brand, you could see John Joe Kenny going the other way. You just don't know. But when you break it down, you think 30 million over the course of 5 years, and he's, say for example, he's our starting right back, and he gets to a point where he's performing on a similar level that what Luca Dean is, then it becomes a bit. It becomes a pretty straightforward transfer, in my opinion. I mean, there's a lot of others that you look at through Europe and things like that, but then you've got the situation of where can they adapt and can they sort of take on the Premier League, and that's sort of what recruitment analysts have got to judge and things like that. And sometimes you get it wrong, sometimes you get it right. But I think when you're looking at what Everton produce from an EFL recruitment standpoint, I think there's a lot of hits. There's not a lot of misses. When you look at like the breakdown. But yeah, I think with Max, I think it'd be a very, very good signing for Everton.
Absolutely.
So yeah.
Absolutely. So you've made your decision off of the yo-yo then?
Yeah. I mean, it just comes to me the other day when I was looking at 30 million, and I was looking at, and I was thinking, well, he's 21. I have got a few issues with his game, but how much can you like sort of dissect of a 21-year-old game? I mean, he come into the league and he was probably top 5 right backs in the league, in the Premier League at 20 years of age. So I think when you look at that aspect and you look at what Ben Godfrey's done in terms of, if he's got the similar attitude as what Ben Godfrey has, but I think he's a lot more technically better than Godfrey. So if he's got the work rate and the attitude, and plus as well, he'll have the sort of core of young lads there to settle him in, and things like that. I think it's a very good signing. And listen, like you said, I think you said Bayern Munich. If Bayern Munich are in for them, like listen, I don't necessarily think Bayern Munich are on the first one for them necessarily. I mean, it's like a lot of players are going to Germany and a lot of players are going abroad and things like that, the sort of thing. But if a Premier League team like Everton are going places in the sort of and they're in Europe, and you're seeing a former teammate there, and listen, players talk, like we said, players talk, and you've seen them commenting on Ben Godfrey's Instagram posts and things like that, and I think you'd be a bit silly if you don't think that they've already had discussions about Everton and what Everton are like and what and the gravitas as well is like Carlo Ancelotti's there.
Yeah.
When you actually break down where Everton are going, and they're in a race for top 6 European places. They're going places.
Yeah, absolutely.
They're gonna be, and they've got a manager in and things like that. So yeah, I think I'm gonna nail down on the mastiff. Yeah, I would have Max. I would buy Max Aarons. Yeah. I think he'd be a very, very good, very good right back for many years to come.
Yeah, no, I agree. And then you look at Max Aarons, and obviously if he was to come in, or any other right back for that matter, then they'd obviously be starting at right back. And then you look at throughout the rest of the defence. I want to we'll finish up in a moment. I understand I've kept you for a long time. I want to end on Luca Dean and his new deal, but just before we go into that, just briefly, obviously you bring in Max Aarons, you've got the right hand side sorted with Max Aarons, you've got the left hand side sorted with Dean, and then you've got Mina, Keane, Godfrey and Holgate, who can all play through the centre. So it's all about depth, isn't it? And that depth is vitally important going forward, certainly if we're going to be in Europe.
Yeah, I mean, one key thing I've sort of learned with Ancelotti over this year is sort of like he wants players who have got versatility and who can sort of adapt in a game situation where week by week you might be playing 4-4-2, but then the next week you might be playing a Christmas tree formation and things like that. That's what he wants. And I put a tweet out saying that he sort of made a mistake against Fulham because he sort of gave the team too much credit in thinking that they could just sort of adapt and sort of play a system that not necessarily they've played all year and things like that. And I think that's going to be key this summer. I think, like you've just mentioned, there's Keane. Keane's just signed a new contract. Yerry Mina is yet to. I think Yerry Mina's contract still to 2023, and he's sort of getting to that point where you go, well, 2 years left on your contract. What are Everton going to do with him?
What's the plan?
I mean, he's been brilliant, and it's very similar to. I think. I don't really want to ruffle feathers and things like that, but I sort of think that you go back to the summer, and they were very, very keen on wanting to get that left-footed centre half.
Yeah.
Now, not necessarily like Godfrey's played well, but as time goes on, you wouldn't really want to see Ben playing that left back situation because it's not his natural role, and also it's not his natural side. He's not a left-footed player, and you can see that with Mason Holgate when Mason plays that left side of defence. I mean, it's very hard to sort of say to fans or to show them what sort of situation where you think, oh no, he's not playing well there, because if you haven't got a left foot where you can sort of turn out and go progress through the pitch very easily, you easily, if your body shape's wrong, and he's taken, and I've seen it plenty of times where he's took a ball off Pickford in that situation and the press is on him, but he has got a left foot to sort of turn a thing. So it's little things like that managers and coaching staff will pick up on and things like that. And listen, I'd love every player to stay and things like that, but sometimes you've got to sort of weigh up the options of thinking well, which one can we afford to let go in a sense. So when you sort of look at Keane, Godfrey is staying, it's probably down to Mina and Holgate, who probably will, maybe, I could be totally wrong, but maybe get the chop or maybe sort of get sold to it, get a certain thing. And I think a key area for me that I've found with Everton this season a sort of recruitment thing. Yeah, it's a right back, and yeah, you're looking at strikers and wingers. That's all fine. But the main issue for me is sort of like a centre half who's a left-footed ball ball playing defender, and who can sort of fill in Luca Dean's area, because we have not got a backup left back.
Yeah.
And the sort of mould I'd like to see at Everton is sort of that Jolie and Lescott role, where he was a centre half and he was a left back.
Yeah.
And if you go and looking at the AFL, and there's one lad who I think's gone under the radar this season, and I'd love, and it's sort of in that Ben Godfrey mould, is Lloyd Kelly from Bournemouth. Yeah. I think he is everything that what Everton needs in terms of a player on the pitch, and I also think he's got that sort of attitude off the pitch where he'd feed into Everton Football Club and things like that. So that's one name I'd really like to see us getting linked with, is Lloyd Kelly from Bournemouth.
Yeah, fair enough. And in terms of just briefly on other areas of the pitch, then obviously it's difficult. We've just beaten Liverpool at Anfield, first derby win in 22 years, and I'm asking you to name where we need to improve. But just other positions, where do you think Everton and Marcel Brand should be looking at in the summer to add to, certainly if we finish in Europe, and we're going to need that depth?
Yeah, it was sort of I mean, obviously right back's pretty obvious, isn't it? I mean, and the issue is like, do you keep Coleman? And I think Coleman's staying because of what he brings in behind the scenes and things like that. He's only got a year left on his contract. Then you've got John Joe Kenny, who's, I think we all know the time's up with John Joe in terms of that case. So I think, and plus as well, I think he deserves to move away and start his own career and things like that. But I think obviously right back's a bit of an issue. And then for me, I think it's after that. I mean, you're looking at sort of where I'm just saying about versatility. I think you need a player who's sort of in the mould of a centre half and a winger. Yeah. So I think that's going to be key. I don't necessarily think we've got, apart from Richarlison, anyone else who can sort of progress the ball and progress the ball into the box in certain terms. I mean, that should be an issue for Everton, because when you look at wingers things, I mean, for just the right side alone, you've got Alex Iwobi and you've got James Rodriguez. Two players who sort of like to come inside and sort of play that inside forward role. We haven't really got an out-and-out winger, and the sort of player, like, I started doing a bit of research and things like that and things, so I'll give you Lloyd Kelly and I'll give you another one, but it's probably between, there's a player in and this player really would probably be a surprise, but I don't necessarily get the credit he deserves, especially in terms of a data side and what he performs on for a club that isn't really necessarily in the top half every year in the English Premier League, and that's Dwight McNeil.
Yeah. Burnley.
He's 21 years. Yeah, he's 21 years of age, and he's an out-and-out winger. And the sort of numbers he puts up for a Burnley side, who you think are not an attacking threat in whatsoever. Yeah. I think, like you say, horses for courses, and you can always develop and see a player. If he went into a team that's got a more attacking threat and things like that, then I think that'd be another shrewd English signing. And you're looking into Europe, where a sort of is the bit of bread and butter in terms of what I like. And there's a lad that is Stuttgart, and I'll probably butcher his name, but it's Silias Wamangito.
Good effort, that.
Or Waman and Tuchel or something like that. It is. It's you try and listen to commentators and you try and get it and you go, right, I've got it.
And then you forget
it. But then when you put on the spot, it's just like it's just that.
Can you imagine that if he comes to Everton?
Well, I tell you what, there'd be a few families absolutely fuming at the cost of that name getting put on the back of shit. But yeah, he's only 21. He's 6'2". He can play left wing, right wing back, centre forward, and he's absolutely tearing the Bundesliga apart at the moment. But when you look at it in terms of what a profile of what a Premier League winger should be, it's power, pace, and aggression and end product, and he has got that in an absolute abundance. And You look at him and think that's sort of what a Marcel Brands sort of signing is, and looking at that and you think, yeah, he would fit the Premier League, and it like I say, it's versatility.
Yeah, absolutely.
So he can play left wing, right wing, and centre forwards, and that's what we're sort of missing. Players who can sort of fill in from Richarlison, fill in for Dominic Calvert-Lewin, and sort of, yeah, the performance might drop a slight bit, but it's not going to drop dramatically.
Yeah, absolutely.
So that's what we're going to see. And yeah, I mean, centre midfield probably the next one.
Yeah,
centre midfield. I mean, I know Tom's done fantastic, but when you look at it, there's only three centre mids that you can sort of trust, really. I mean, the others, hopefully, I mean, you don't necessarily want people to get sold on the win, but you're looking at, you're trying to break down sort of who will go and what they're producing. I mean, Andre Gomez and Skilfie Sigurdsson are probably the hot topics of Everton fans, aren't they? And you sort of look at in terms of what they're producing, in terms of like what they're getting given in terms of salary and things like that, and what they're producing on the pitch. It's, I mean, not necessarily so much Skilfie Sigurdsson, it's so much like Andre Gomez. It's like, how much time do you start giving a player before you start thinking like away from away? Like, when does that player come a hindrance financially? When does he become a hindrance in terms of on the team? And my fuse is quite short on players like that. It's sort of like a ruthless thing where you go, he's got to go, and unfortunately, I think for Everton to progress and wanting to sort of break into top six, they've got to get a player in who's going to be consistent, and probably Andre Gomez and Fabian Delph, probably the two that are sort of you're looking at in that centre midfield and thinking they're probably on about what? I mean, I worked it out. I don't really like saying wages, but like 240 grand a week for the both of them, and yeah, that noise says it all. And you're looking at what they produce in terms of for that value.
And
it's just not really up to standard, really. And I think one main fella who I'd love to get at Everton is Zambo Anguissa from Fulham. I think he is exactly what Carlo Ancelotti wants. He can sort of do that. He can sort of be the playmaker role, but he can also be that ball winner enforcer. And listen, whoever gets him is gonna, and probably the top teams in European football are gonna be looking at a player like that, because he's only 25, but he's a unit, really. And you look at him and what he's done at Fulham. Like I say, like a lot of recruitment teams and a lot of fans. Sorry, not in terms of recruitment teams. Sorry, a lot of fans look at players and you go, well, he's at Fulham. Why would we want him, and things like that? It's not necessarily the idea. It's the idea of what he could bring to Everton.
Absolutely.
And you look at his trajectory and what he's putting in terms of stats wise and performances for Fulham. So if you can go and bring that to Everton on a higher scale with better players, then you're only going one way, really, aren't you? We've seen it, like, I know I didn't really want to bring others up, and I won't mention certain clubs, but you look at what Leicester's doing. And I absolutely love Leicester's recruitment. They're fantastic. I mean, a lot of people probably didn't know who Wesley Fofana was. But then you see him play and you go, where have they brought this lad from? A lot of fans would say, but a lot of us have watched him and think that's an absolute fantastic signing.
Absolutely.
So and they've done that with Tillman as well. So I'd love Everton to start doing that. I want to at one point get excited where, like, I've been scarred over the last few years with Everton's recruitment, and even last summer, I was like, you sort of get in the thing, oh, James Rodriguez, 29, you start thinking negative, but what he's produced is fantastic. Especially, I mean, it's quite surprising in a recruitment side that 4 players are being brought in and 4 players have worked.
Yeah, that's it.
Like, that doesn't really necessarily go with the grain in terms of recruitment wise. That's quite, you're hoping maybe 2 out of 4 do really well, or 4 out of 4. It's been a fantastic thing, and we're seeing it, aren't we? So Yeah.
Absolutely, mate. Couldn't agree more. Well, I'm sure we'll sit down on another live stream on the Mighty Blues YouTube channel in the next couple of weeks or so and sit down and talk in depth about signings. Just want to finish up then before we go on Luca Dean. Signed his new deal yesterday, keeping him at the club until 2025. Spoke about Everton being like a perfect wedding and the fans loving him and the song that obviously is sung for him. Excellent news, isn't it, that Luca Dean's committed his future. And I think he was a player who me and you both sort of sat down at the start of the season prior to even before I think we'd even signed Alan and said, look, if we don't take that step forward, if we don't really progress, players like Luca Dean are going to sit there and go, I should be playing Champions League here, so I'm gonna want to move on. Whereas obviously it's excellent news that he signed that new deal.
Yeah, it's fantastic. I mean, you always look, I think, when players are at turn up, when players are there, and you think Leighton Baines, you think, well, who can sort of fill them boots? Yeah. And he's duly doing it, really, isn't absolutely. He? I mean, I wouldn't give him the Leighton Baines stature just yet, but because he was a different player, Leighton Baines. Really, I thought at one point Baines was probably the best in the world in his career, and let's be honest, and he's probably going down the same route as Leighton Baines because he probably won't ever get the credit he deserves because he's at Everton. But over the last 2-3 years, maybe you could say that he's probably been. I'll give him it. I'll probably say the last 3 years he's been the best left back in the Premier League.
Yeah, me too.
In terms of what he's produced, and like I say, like stats back that up. Especially in what he's created and things like that. I mean, it's all right saying like, oh yeah, he's got like other players have got 10 assists and all, but you don't necessarily need to look at assists. You need to see what he's creating and what is it. I mean, I know a lot of people don't like expected goals and things like that, but expected assists is a very sort of stat that I like. Yeah. It just shows me what they're producing in terms of. It's in front of the goal, really, and setting people up. You can take a horse to water, but you can't make it drink, can you? So
that's the saying.
That's what Luca Dean is, really. And I think personally, I think he's been the best left back in the Premier League, and he sort of hasn't really had a breather.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
he plays when he's hurt. He plays when he's sort of, and he goes on like 15-20 game streaks, and you're like, how is this lad still going? Yeah. I mean, certain times last year I thought this lad needs a break, and let's hope sort of that gets looked at in the summer, because I think then if that's sort, not like in the sense of giving him a break, in the sense of giving him competition and sort of rotation in a sense, I think you'll see a far better player.
Yeah, I agree.
I mean, I don't even necessarily know if he can get even better, but I think he will.
Yeah.
Because you're coming back fresh and things like that. It all works in tandem, and I think it's fantastic that Everton have done it, and it just shows you what now. I think we were going off the track with this project, but now things are falling into place, and you're sort of getting that feeling now where we got it, where Michele did come in with like, hold on a minute, no, this is actually. Yeah. This train's going, and it's picking up momentum very, very quickly.
Yeah, absolutely. And like you said, this week has been the perfect example of that. The Derby win, which is again just a whole nother level. The stadium news, which is excellent, and Luca Dean's new contact as well. I couldn't agree more. But we'll finish up there then, Tom. Massive thank you for joining us on this episode of the Park End Podcast. If you're listening on Spotify or iTunes or all of those different platforms, don't forget to share the podcast, give it a high rating, maybe give it a nice review. If you're watching on the YouTube channel, The Mighty Blues, don't forget to leave the video a like, leave your thoughts in the comment section as well. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel, of course. I think you can subscribe on Apple Podcasts as well, so don't forget to subscribe over there. Tom, massive thanks for joining us, mate. Anything to say before we finish up?
No, let's just hope we see a fantastic European tour next season, and like I say, I just want to say it doesn't necessarily mean where I was talking about getting inspired at 19, 18, 20. I mean, even if you're 35, 40, 45, don't necessarily think the road ends there. I mean, your life still goes on, and you can always find your passion in an older time, and just keep persevering. And one day you'll knock a door down, and you'll go through, and it'll be the perfect moment for you in your life. So yeah, just keep going and keep pursuing your passions.
Absolutely, and I echo every single word of that, and I think that's a really, really important message, certainly in these sort of times that we're in now. I think Tom's absolutely spot on there. You can check out Tom's Twitter in the description down below and in the description of the podcast and stuff, so don't forget to go over and follow him. A massive thank you for watching. If you've enjoyed this episode of the podcast, like I said, leave it a like and all of that good stuff. We'll be back soon with another episode, but until then, massive thanks for watching. Up the toffees, and we'll see you soon.